Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Louise Ledeen, a member of the IBM Global Alliance team at NetApp, and I'll be your host. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our three featured presenters who will address the topic, why the cloud is critical to your competitive advantage, from their own unique perspectives. Our keynote speaker is Curtis Price. Curtis is the IDC Program Vice President for Infrastructure Services. Curtis will share the recent trends, drivers, and hybrid cloud services based on findings from a number of recent IDC surveys and IDC's in-depth analysis. Following Curtis is Harold Smith, the Vice President of Systems Engineering at IBM SoftLayer. Harold's presentation will bring these cloud trends and drivers into focus by describing the innovation and differentiation of IBM SoftLayer's infrastructure as a service, built to meet the business objectives, security, and technical requirements of their broad clientele base, from born on the web to Fortune 500 companies and public sector organizations around the globe. Our third speaker is Jarod Rodriguez. Jarod is a NetApp hybrid cloud architect supporting cloud architecture development efforts in North America. Jarod's focus will be on NetApp Data Fabric, a unified data management architecture that organizations are adopting to help solve the challenges of data management in today's IT landscape, spanning from on-premises IT across the hybrid cloud continuum. The Data Fabric architecture is foundational to many of the IBM SoftLayer cloud storage services. And before we begin, some logistics. In the interest of time, questions will be addressed at the end of the three presentations. Throughout the webinar, you'll be able to ask your questions via the chat window. Please be sure to identify the presenter you're addressing your questions to. We'll try and answer all questions during the webinar. If for any reason we don't get to your question, we will respond to you directly via your registration email address. Today's webinar will be recorded, and the slides will be made available to attendees. In addition, an IBC report that encapsulates many of the key topics covered today is also available for you to download. And with that, Curtis, I'd like to invite you to kick off today's webinar and begin your presentation. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Louise, and hello to everyone. For my portion of the presentation, what I'd like to do is take you through three things. First, some of the trends and drivers that we see around cloud services, and particularly hybrid cloud services. Give you an idea of how companies are adopting or consuming these services. And then lastly, give you an idea of how we see cloud services evolving, what we see in the future, if you will, for future IT environments. So if we start around the trends, there are a number of different trends and drivers that we see moving toward this whole cloud phenomenon, if you will. And you'll see a list of four things here that we've got listed on this slide. We think that most of those are sort of acquiescing around these four major topics. And what we see large enterprises really addressing the requirement to manage an ever-increasing scale of compute and storage infrastructure. But having to manage finite on-premise capacity has really created a need for more creative approaches to meeting enterprise growing resource requirements. And as a result, we're now seeing organizations turning to hyperscale cloud computing providers really to meet IT requirements for both scale and flexibility. Increasing use of these services from providers is also creating a need for enterprises to optimize the integration and management of their workloads in hybrid cloud IT environments, which has also created some challenges. So results from some of the surveys that we've conducted show that enterprises are clearly using a variety of cloud, or outsourced models to meet their IT requirements. And as this chart on the slide shows, there are lots of fragmentation in terms of the types of delivery models used for cloud. But the key takeaway here is that there is an undeniable move toward cloud that will be gradual. And I think that enterprise migration will be somewhat tempered by concerns around security, governance, regulatory compliance mandates, etc. However, as enterprises review their strategies for effectively managing the growth in data, we believe that the adoption of a sort of best-of-breed hybrid cloud approach, where there'll be a mix of deployment models used, will ultimately provide the flexibility to deploy workloads in the most optimal environment. So I've mentioned the term hybrid cloud a few times, so let me give our definition of what this means. From an IDC perspective, we're really looking at a unified, automated, policy-based IT as a service environment supported by a mix of public, private, and non-cloud assets. Those could be physical, virtual, or even software-defined resources. So with that defined, we can look at all the different ways that companies have adopted hybrid cloud. Based on another survey we conducted, 65% of U.S. respondents are currently pursuing hybrid IT strategies. But it's clear that everybody has a different view of cloud, and there are varying approaches to how companies procure and manage cloud services. In the previous chart, we talked about the fragmentation in terms of cloud deployment models being used, but there's also differences in how companies manage and procure cloud services. So from a management perspective, we see many companies utilizing up to 10 cloud providers on average today to fulfill their IT requirements. And we expect to see that number rise over the next 2 years to anywhere between 15 and 16 different providers of cloud services. So as a result, we believe that there will be a significant emphasis on management tools and processes that will enable a more cohesive management strategy across multiple cloud domains. So because companies are coming to cloud with a broad array of requirements, we see differences in how they plan to use hybrid cloud. And when we asked questions in terms of agreeing with statements about their use of external cloud providers, the choices listed here in the chart represent either a response of agree or strongly agree. And because of this, we believe that there's a need for assistance in terms of determining what the best solution is for the workload, current IT environment, and security requirements that these companies have. Also, the existing investments in tools and processes that they've made must be factored in as well. And we're beginning to see much more activity on the part of both service providers and vendors in terms of providing consultative services to help with cloud migration and make sure that workload environments were aligned to the best cloud solution. So if we look at growth in storage capacity and where that storage will be consumed, we believe it represents an indicator of future demand for cloud services, and hybrid cloud services in particular. So from this chart, you can see that most companies expect to see storage capacity growth range between 25 and 75%. However, if we peel the onion back on this a bit, we expect to see an even large portion of that capacity being consumed by public cloud deployments. In fact, if by 2020, we expect cloud, both public and private, to represent roughly 50% of storage deployment. And we believe that this is one of the biggest indicators of the increased demand we expect to see for hybrid solutions that will provide scale efficiencies for enterprise storage resources, as well as providing a level of application breadth as well. So in terms of the use cases that we see, specifically for storage cloud services, there are an array of applications that customers want to utilize, storage applications that they want to utilize in a cloud delivery model. Backup, recovery, and archiving services represent an immediate area of opportunity for cloud storage. In fact, most organizations we surveyed, these top the list of cloud storage offerings that companies will invest in over the next 12 months. I should also point out that during the 12 months, we also expect to see investment in a mix of other services, and those are also listed here on this chart. So there's really no one-size-fits-all when it comes to cloud. As you can see from the surveys that we've conducted and the responses that we've gotten back, there are lots of different approaches that will be pursued. But I think concerns around costs, risk of technology lock-in, workload suitability will all play a role in determining the best transformational path for an enterprise to pursue. And so working closely with a vendor and or service provider early in the decision-making process around cloud migration will ultimately help ensure that they're pursuing an optimal approach based on what those IT requirements represent. So if we look at sort of building the foundation for cloud and what that should look like, there are a couple of things that we think should be considered. This idea that we call sort of workload realignment, where infrastructure investments target what we call third platform systems of engagement and insight rather than maintaining systems of records, is really becoming critical. And this really ushers in a more collaborative IT environment that relies on a more integrated and collaborative infrastructure. We think that's going to be extremely important going forward when we start thinking about this age of the Internet of Things and analytics, to support analytics as well. Hybrid data centers are clearly the new reality, and we see a majority of IT assets being housed in co-location, hosting, and cloud data centers. And we also see the need to sort of provide a data management structure for aligning data flows in both inner data center domains as well as data center to edge domains. We see that being incredibly important going forward. I mentioned earlier about the need for professional services and help in terms of understanding what the best path to pursue. We also see that being extremely important, and as I mentioned, a number of the vendors and service providers are reaching out and helping with these professional services through strategy workshops, assessment services as well. Those are very important. We think those are very valuable to really understanding the direction that enterprises should go in terms of their requirements. So lastly, I just wanted to give you an idea of how we see the world evolving. So this new idea around IT, or what we call the future of IT. I hesitate to call this a sort of maturity model, but I think that what we'll see are sort of three stages of development as it relates to cloud. The first one on the left, we really think that some workloads will remain on-prem or in third-party co-location facilities. And this is either to avoid application refactoring because the app is internal and is best kept on site. This is usually the criteria that folks that have an issue with giving up control of that application environment or are concerned around security requirements will stay in this mode for those types of companies. We think others will move to this, what we call a steady state cloud, and it's a way to tap into the automation brought by cloud technologies, but for more predictable workloads that do not require sort of the constant on-demand scaling of elastic hyperscale cloud environments, or the tooling platform capabilities required for new cloud-native applications. So that'll be the second domain, if you will. The last domain is what we really call the variable cloud, and this is where hyperscale cloud capabilities can really be leveraged. It's providing that elastic compute needed for dynamic applications and workloads, the ability to enable back-end data consolidation, and the creation of data stores or warehouses that would leverage front-end compute power for new analytics or cognitive workloads, either for internal processes or for new business models. So that's the sort of lay of the land in terms of when we look at the trends or the consumption models and then how we see things evolving going forward. I'll next hand it over to Jarod, who will speak from an IBM SoftLayer perspective. Jarod, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Curtis. So I'd just like to briefly go through a few slides and talk about, Curtis mentioned how cloud has matured, and I'd like to touch on that as well as why we believe from an IBM cloud perspective, why hybrid is important to the enterprise, and then of course how IBM Cloud SoftLayer differentiating the market and actually enables the hybrid cloud story. So so cloud is maturing. 15 years ago, it was probably one of the largest disruptions as we see now. Of course, hindsight 2020. And early adoption of the cloud was considered to be a competitive advantage. And early on, the initial reasons why were typically around cost savings, time to market, and things like change it to an OpEx model to free up cash to invest in other areas, which of course provided the ability for large organizations and even smaller organizations to become more agile. So they were early consideration of cloud were typically based on these ideas. They were infrastructure-centric. In the case of IBM SoftLayer, we offer bare metal. In case of the other providers that exist out there, a lot of them are, around virtual compute, low-cost storage, and doing what we consider to be traditional application hosting. So taking what you may already have in your data center today and replacing that or putting that into a cloud data center. What we're seeing now is the trend is we're moving up the stack. So as innovation is concerned, we're now looking at more of the platform or consuming cloud as a service. We have found out that cloud is usually not cheaper anymore. Nowadays, most organizations are looking to gain cost neutrality because as they may move to the cloud, they may either need new skills to leverage cloud services, or they may be using their extra cash flow to fund additional projects to help them become more competitive in their own market. So essentially, nowadays, as we move up the stack, we're getting more bang for the same buck. So there's a less focus on infrastructure and more on consuming services. And we are all familiar with, the typical first or top workloads that like to move to the cloud. So that's your dev test workloads and your backups. Of all of the organizations I've talked to over the years, as they're making their move with their cloud initiatives, that is typically one of the two first workloads that like to move to the cloud. So that has also enabled many more tools to be developed in the market today, and those tools are pretty extensive, and a lot of those have matured. So in the innovation front, we're now seeing more things like web and mobile apps. We're seeing a ton of DevOps tooling and things like that. So with that pushes us into driving business value, because as now organizations are realizing that they can do things like DevOps tooling in the cloud, and it's much more efficient than doing it in-house, or at least launching the infrastructure in-house. That's enabled them to create new applications, create new ways of communicating with their customers, and create new ways of providing or bringing more value to their organization. So that's where we have things like cognitive apps, advanced analytics, and of course, the Internet of Things, and tying those things together. So IBM's vision is essentially to weave together services, infrastructure, and data by rapidly bringing these types of ideas to production. So hybrid clouds, from an IBM perspective, IBM cloud perspective, we have learned that clients are no longer choosing to invest budget into, upgrading or replacing on-premise infrastructure. As a matter of fact, I would probably say 70% of the customers I have engaged with over the last 3 years have made comments like, I don't want to ever build another data center, and in fact, I prefer to turn down half of the data centers that I have built, or that they may have leases coming up, or whatever the case may be. They just want to get out of the data center business and focus on their primary business. But one fact does still remain, that enterprises, specifically those that are not born on the web, organizations still benefit by having a combination of on-premise and off-premise. So they're constantly looking for OpEx solutions today to consume services in hours versus weeks or months. And that's where the hybrid approach comes in, where we take a global organization, global network connected to your on-premise network, and allow you to share services between your traditional back-end or back-office systems with your customer-facing public systems that can be deployed in the cloud to leverage that scale. One point I'd like to bring up is that Forrester indicated that North American and European companies will have up to 20% of their custom-built software on public cloud by the end of 2017. So that is an indication that applications still need access to their traditional systems, to their systems of record that they will keep on premise for a few years to come. And I do see that number increasing, and I see that some of those applications, as they rebuild and retool them so they could be cloud enabled or cloud ready, will also eventually move to the cloud or into hosted data centers. But today, as Curtis mentioned, I see the hybrid model as a combination of co-location, combined with cloud data centers and on-premise facilities. So 4 values that we seek to bring to clients to adopt hybrid cloud: that's speed, flexibility, innovation, and insight. And just to kind of touch on each one of those, speed is definitely important. We know if you're not first, you're last. So time to market is extremely important in the volatile industry, pretty much in any line of business or industry today. We do like to provide flexibility as well. So as you know, IBM Cloud does offer the ability to do virtual compute. We offer power systems. We offer AIX in some of our cloud data centers. And of course, we also offer virtual compute. And then we also, in the last couple of years, launched a platform as a service offering called Bluemix. So we like to offer the flexibility to our end users to make sure they can choose which pieces work best for them. And then innovation. That is something that we strive to do on a regular basis, is to bring emerging technologies, things like Watson, to the masses. Because although, yes, we can do great things with Watson, we are one organization. If we can give everybody that power, you can only imagine what can be created with something as simple as Watson's cognitive learning abilities. And then, of course, insight. So this kind of ties in with like data analytics. So if we can provide you with the platform to analyze your data, or just to even have insight into our data centers and your infrastructure in your cloud implementation, you can take those two things and just become smarter about your infrastructure and smarter with your decisions going forward. So a couple of key differentiators with IBM Cloud and SoftLayer. First, we have a global private network. I will show you that actually in the next slide. As cloud is expected, we have predictable billing. We have no long-term contracts. So from an infrastructure standpoint, you consume bare metal machines that are completely dedicated to single tenant, either by the hour or by the month. There's nothing, no longer-term contracts outside of that. We also offer customizable configurations down to just the type of hard drive that you place in your chassis and the particular processors. We do offer bare metal and virtual servers on the same platform. And what that means is that, hybrid can take on many different forms. I even consider hybrid to mean bare metal and virtual machines sitting next to each other, potentially in the same VLAN or same IP subnet, and being able to communicate with each other. And that combination could also include hourly or monthly compute, whether it be bare metal or virtual. And then, of course, quick deployment. So bare metal servers, 2 to 4 hours in any one of our 38 bare metal enabled data centers, and up to 15 minutes for virtual machines in any of our data centers as well. So our global private network. So this just kind of gives you an overview. Today we have a total of about 45, actually as of a couple of weeks ago, and maybe 46 now, globally interconnected IBM Cloud data centers. As you see, I've sitting in over a high number of countries, and they are all interconnected by a private high-speed network that totals somewhere in the realm of about 5 terabits per second, just within our own network. Most of these locations also represent points of presence, and a point of presence is key to the hybrid strategy, as points of presence allow us to or allow our customers to connect into your cloud data centers. So it also puts you on net to access any of the other data centers that you see on this map. So for example, you connect into Dallas point of presence, you can also access your resources and servers in India, for instance, or in London. And that data is absolutely free of charge, transferred over the SoftLayer private network. So that is also a huge, huge advantage for those that have global organizations, for those that have global expansion plans, as you can now deploy your cloud at the hourly or monthly model pretty much in any one of these dots that you see on this map. We have a number of options for what we call direct link, or that's the connectivity into SoftLayer, through cloud exchanges, as well as traditional physical lease lines, as well as options such as NetBond. Some of these locations also offer co-location, what we call direct link co-location as an offering, where we can do things like place storage devices in those particular locations, and also in the point of presence, because they are on net with the rest of the cloud platform. There are also locations to place things like NetApp storage devices if necessary, to bring your data closer to the cloud without having to actually physically transfer or do anything over the network. And then, of course, this entire 5 terabit network is also managed pretty much 98% by an API. And that is a single pane of glass portal that leverages that same API, and we also expose that API to end users so they can write their own applications or write their own integration, whether it be providing a catalog to your internal customers or reselling, or really the world is yours, because there's over 4,000 methods in this API that allow you to create a completely customized and integrated solution, from provisioning servers to changing IP addressing schemes, or counseling, or even ticketing. So I'd kind of like to introduce just NetApp. They are a premier partner. We have a strategic partnership with them to help clients implement cloud solutions. They're also the magic behind the curtain for our storage offering. And there are a couple of things that we do with NetApp that are from a hybrid approach that allow us to be very competitive in the market. There are products such as NetApp AltaVault that would sit on premise that allow you to do things like backing up to our object storage. And it's already integrated with that particular product so that you can do backups. As I mentioned earlier, backup is one of the, when somebody wants to put their toe into the water for cloud, backup is usually one of the first things they want to look at. So this makes it extremely easy. You deploy this AltaVault on premise, and you essentially point it to our object storage platform. And then within SoftLayer, in a multi-tenant and some single-tenant options, we also use NetApp for our performance and endurance storage. So that's our block and file storage offering that we provide over a private network for customers to consume essentially by the volume, and you're able to order it in a customizable fashion, either at a service level or by the IOP, essentially. And then we also have some dedicated options. We also are capable of deploying ONTAP Select. So if you'd like to take one of my bare metal machines that can hold 36 drives, we could create a software defined storage for our clients as well within the SoftLayer walls. So that's kind of just a summary of SoftLayer and IBM Cloud and what hybrid means to us. I'll turn it over to Jarod just to give us a little bit more details on NetApp, the data fabric, and how they could deliver hybrid as well.
All right. Thank you, Harold. Appreciate it. So I'm going to walk through a brief description of the data fabric as it's specific to NetApp and how we see the hybrid cloud evolving. For a storage company, it's a pretty bold statement. Obviously to say the cloud is compelling, I think everybody understands that now. But about 5 years ago, we ventured into this journey as we saw our local on-prem FAS filers, which were the mainstay of our business. Those workloads were moving into the cloud. So we saw that trend or ebb coming, and we needed to figure out how we were going to manage that. So what we did is we do what we always do, and we go out and look for partners like IBM, and we start working with them to build this hybrid cloud, storage service model. And what we ended up with really is this data fabric vision. So, the use cases that we see that Harold and both Curtis have mentioned, for the most part, disaster recovery, compute burst, DevOps, backup and archive, etc., are really the more common use cases. And those are a perfect fit for NetApp on-prem, and they're a perfect fit inside of the IBM SoftLayer cloud, where their primary block and file storage services are based on NetApp, as well as some of their software-defined offerings. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the key points here. So why is it really different for a storage company to say cloud is compelling? And for compute, it's pretty easy. You can turn a server on, you can turn a server off. It's very stateful. But when you start looking at data, it has mass, right? It's big, it's heavy. When you start wanting to move multiple terabyte databases from on-prem into the cloud, it's not very easy. There's latency, there's low bandwidth situations. So how do you manage that and make it useful to an end user consumer? At certain times the data may be hot, it may be cold. You may want to archive it off to the cloud. You may want to bring it back. And customers want to be able to manage that from their own data centers and their own management tools. So with that being said, NetApp has really created what we call the data fabric. And the data fabric is simply a mesh, if you will, of connected endpoints, either software-defined, physical FAS filers, hybrid cloud solutions such as IBM SoftLayer, and allowing customers to move the data in and out, to control the security context for that data, to give them multiple cloud choices where we can connect multiple clouds. As Curtis mentioned, the average consumer now is somewhere around 10 cloud services. So to be able to put all those into a single view, if you will, provide the integration and programmable fabric APIs, if you will, needs to be exposed, and still controlling access and consistency. So it really doesn't matter where your data lives. NetApp and IBM are partnering up to help customers manage their data in a cohesive manner. So I'm going to go through just 4 of the data fabric layers. There's more, but these are the 4 that are really key to the offerings that we're building with IBM. And as Harold mentioned earlier, it's really around data management and storage management. So right now we're delivering a set of capabilities and APIs to manage the access. And while the storage is being abstracted for many of the services, we're extending through API ecosystem the ability to do things like you would normally do with a NetApp file or on-prem. For example, snapshots. Right? Customers love snapshots. They want to take backups as frequently as they can so they can reduce their risk for disaster and have the ability to roll back. But when you're in a public cloud context and storage is abstracted, customers don't have that physical control. And the way that we're solving those problems is SoftLayer is providing a robust set of APIs that are being exposed to the end user tenant and as well as the user interface, and they're enabling the NetApp snapshots for the end user customer. It's a different set of management tools, but it's the same NetApp snapshot features and functions under the covers. And they're also providing an API so that customers can programmatically write their own code to take advantage of those snapshots as well. Storage management certainly is a key tenet. The ability to increase performance by adding different media types, higher performance flash drives or SSDs, if you will, and the customer doesn't really have to worry about it. There's a menu of options available from a very low performant, high capacity volume basis all the way up to small capacity but extremely high performance. And all they have to do is go into the menu system and say, I want to buy X, Y, and Z, and then it automatically provisions it and presents it out to the end user tenant in a very quick fashion. Common data transports. How do we move this massive data all over the world? Right inside that SoftLayer private network, every data center is equipped with the physical platform for storage, and you can connect to any physical layer, bare metal server running any operating system of your choice, or a virtualized instance connected to that storage, and take advantage of SnapMirror. Right? NetApp SnapMirror is the common data transport that really stitches the fabric together, and that's how we move data efficiently, cost-effectively, and securely across all these different networks, including your own on-prem network over VPN-controlled connections. And then platforms, certainly last but not least, platforms have been traditionally associated with bare metal, sheet metal type solutions or engineered solutions, but our platform portfolio is growing and we're building more and more software-defined solutions such that customers can have the personality, the functionality that they're used to in NetApp Data on Tap, but on their own hardware, right, on an abstracted hypervisor implementation model such that we have in IBM SoftLayer today. So we'll get into a little bit more detail on this. So what does a data fabric, data management layer look like? It's really around data protection, right? Data durability, the ability to take snapshot copies, data compression, then provisioning and cloning, things that customers are used to when they have a physical NetApp FAS appliance. You can do those in the cloud now, abstracted through APIs and through software-defined infrastructure. The security technology, right? We have encryption at rest, so you can order secure disks inside of the SoftLayer IBM portfolio and know that your data will be secure. It's encrypted in flight. They control the encryption keys for you, and it's also multiple tenants. So everybody has their own little virtual private storage array, if you will. Backup and restore, as Jarod mentioned, AltaVault. It's a very easy solution to implement either on-prem or in the cloud. You can actually define or deploy a virtualized AltaVault appliance inside of SoftLayer and use that just like you would normally in your on-prem data center to back up your data inside of their SoftLayer cloud into their object storage. So you can do that. And multiple protocol access as well. So not only are you going to have object storage, you're going to have the traditional NetApp protocols available to you, NFS, CIFS, SysCSI, etc., across a varying array of platforms. So storage management is a key foundational element as well for us. It's definitely one of the more, enterprise-grade ones that customers are expecting now. Just because you're in the cloud doesn't mean your data durability and your availability requirements change, especially if you're moving production workloads like Oracle or SAP. Customers still expect 5 nines or 6 nines of availability, and the only way to do that today is to take an enterprise-grade purpose-built platform and put that into the cloud context. So, with things like RAID DP and erasure coding, you can feel comfortable that your data is going to be protected from multi-disk failures and things like that, which we all know drives are going to fail, especially as they're getting bigger and bigger. You want your data to be protected, and we're utilizing the traditional NetApp technologies inside of the IBM storage offering today, and scale-out architecture, right? Things that work well for customers in an enterprise certainly work very well for for our partners in a public cloud or hyperscaler context. They run very large, high scale up, high scale out type of infrastructure, and the ability to change media types very quickly from low capacity SSDs to high capacity SSDs is literally an ongoing process, and they're able to take advantage of the newer technologies very quickly, and in a cloud context the customers can as well. The management efficiency is really around shared storage and high availability, so they're able to take advantage of running very dense storage arrays and protecting those assets from any sort of danger, outside of their data centers very easily. So what does a data fabric really look like in action? So as mentioned earlier, the common data transport is really where all the magic happens. So if you look at all these little dots, product offerings, if you will, in the portfolio, those are essentially a fabric endpoint, if you will, And the way that they're going to communicate with each other is through SnapMirror today in some sort of RESTful API. So it really doesn't matter what NetApp product you're using in your data center today. You can take advantage of that in a hybrid context. So you can have your assets talking on-prem through the through the internet or some sort of direct link connection, either near the cloud, in the cloud, wherever it may be. We're going to rely on the NetApp SnapMirror transport to move data efficiently around the different clouds, and that's going to create a completely woven fabric for most customers, and it allows them to take advantage of thin replication. It starts to get pretty expensive if you're paying public transfer fees to move multiple terabyte databases, but once the seeding is done and you just want to maintain consistency and updates, NetApp SnapMirror only replicates the changed block, so it becomes very cost effective and efficient to move data around the cloud. And this is just a portfolio map, if you will. Kind of shows a small portion of the NetApp portfolio specific to storage. We certainly have management tools, etc. But right now, I just wanted to focus on a little bit of the platforms that we have from an engineered perspective. And an engineered are typically on-prem assets. They're physical sheet metal with memory and drives. But as we're moving more into a cloudy context model, we're starting to deliver more of a software-defined offering. And for example, Jarod mentioned ONTAP Select. So that would allow customers to basically take the features and functions of ONTAP and select their own hardware to run it on inside of a SoftLayer data center. And on the far right are really the solutions that we've partnered with together today that are currently available in the marketplace. So whether it's a storage as a service offering that's either block or file, those are available in an as-a-consumption model today from IBM. And then the ONTAP Select is a software-defined offering that you can certainly build from a BYOL perspective, so bring your own license. And we're working towards building that in a highly consumption model as well, where you basically pay for what you're using when you're using it, and when you're done, you can decom it. So there's no contractual commitments for long-term use on that, and that's available today as well. And then AltaVault, for sure, that's in a software-defined offering. Just wanted to touch real quick on the highlights for the IBM SoftLayer STAS offering. As Jarod and Curtis both mentioned, there's a lot of challenges around growth in the cloud space. How do you control cost? How do you provide new and differentiated cloud services, and so on? But the main stable offering that we have available today is really around block and file. So if customers need iSCSI connections or either NFS connections, both of those are readily available inside of the SoftLayer portfolio, and you can consume it in a couple of different formats. One is a fixed allocated performance ratio per capacity, or you can select your capacity as well as your performance. So you have a couple of different dials that you can turn up or down to meet the business needs for your applications. And as a result, they're fully API programmable. So if customers want to take advantage of their normal Snap Manager type tools and technologies, they can do that today because there's an API for it inside of SoftLayer. And you can take advantage of the normal NetApp snapshot tools like Snap Creator and actually take a consistent backup of Oracle or SQL by using the plugins for the APIs at SoftLayer. So as a result, it really helps customers accelerate time to market because they can take advantage of the DevOps model, if you will, for cloning and rapid prototyping around provisioning of large data sets in a software-defined offering or in the physical storage as a service model as well. And in doing so, we're certainly improving customer experience and streamlining the onboarding of customer data that customers are trying to get into the SoftLayer cloud. So as a key takeaway here today, really, create a cloud foundation layer with data on tap. It's a bold statement for a storage company, but the way we look at the world, it's not an on-prem or a private or a public conversation. It's really around utilizing all the assets in the right areas at the right time, at the right cost. And the way that we're going to be able to provide that flexibility and control to the end user is really creating a fabric. And by creating that fabric, it's going to allow you to use a common set of tools to manage it all from NetApp. And a wide range of ecosystems and partners and technologies are certainly supported. And we're offering several deployment models today, ranging from your on-prem data physical assets to the software-defined offerings that are continuing to be delivered and developed today. and it's real. It's not a product. It's really more of a strategy and execution, if you will. And there's really no other vendors right now on the planet that are working together to provide, the hybrid cloud storage model in integrated storage services today. And it allows you to evolve your data fabric over time as well. As I mentioned, everything is really a data fabric endpoint. You can put new endpoints in, or you can take old endpoints out. It really allows you to optimize your IT, TCO ROI model around data management and lifecycle management, as you no longer have to, really write down or amortize your assets over a fixed rate. If you only need it for 3 months, great. You spin it up, you utilize it, and you turn it down. Or if you need them for a longer time frame, that's fine as well. So with that, I believe that is the last slide. We do have a couple different attachments and links that are available for download. The IDC white paper, Optimizing Scale and Security Using the Hybrid Cloud Strategy, is available, as well as the webcast slides too today. I think we have a few questions. And
hi, Jarod. I'll take over from there.
Okay,
so
thanks.
No problem. We have a few questions. Some of them actually were answered within the context of the presentations, but we'll just go through them. Curtis, I'll ask you about this one. The first question is, if I have legacies, what kind of cloud do you recommend? And I know that's a broad question, but perhaps you can answer it. And certainly if the other presenters...
it's one of the things that I was talking about when when I referred to this idea of really aligning your requirements with the optimal cloud solution. I think most companies are looking at not only newer applications that they're developing, but how they're going to integrate the legacy. And it is a tough question, Louise, because I think it really depends, like I said, on what those requirements are. But I would say that working closely with your vendor of choice or your cloud service provider that can help understand what that legacy environment looks like, what the requirements of that legacy environment are essential to making sure that the choice that's made going forward is the optimal for not only the legacy but any of the next generation workloads that you're running as well.
Great, thank you. The next question really, I guess, is more focused on people who have FAS systems in their data centers and have some questions about running their systems in the cloud. So I'll direct these both to Jarod. Question is, I just want to make sure that I understand correctly. SoftLayer has FAS systems within their cloud.
Yes, they do. So I don't know if Harold wants to answer this or not, but I'll answer it real briefly here. So the storage as a service offering for block and file are all based on NetApp FAS technology, and there's various media types in there to give different qualities of service and SLA targets. So if you're running bare metal and you need running Windows or a Linux machine and you need an NFS mount, you can order any size up to, I believe, 12 terabytes today in a certain amount of IOPS and connect it to that host. And all of that is backed by FAS. But if you're talking about having a dedicated FAS solution on a single tenant basis, that's not an offering that's currently available, but we do offer NPS, which is the NetApp Private Storage Solution, which is near the cloud, which has a direct link back into the compute layer inside of IBM SoftLayer data centers worldwide that Harold did mention. So that gives the customer the ability to have their own FAS inside a cloud-connected data center and take advantage of the rental compute or and pay-go model for those assets. So there's a couple different ways to get storage services, if you will, inside of the IBM SoftLayer data centers. And certainly we offer a software-defined offering, so you can build your own FAS, your virtual appliance, inside of a SoftLayer data center using their rental compute.
Thanks, Jarod. And I think the next question is very similar. Can I take my NetApp filer in my local data center and snap mirror data into the IBM SoftLayer data center? And I think the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we really recommend that customers use the software-defined offering for that because it gives them full control, root level control, access console control, access, so they can control their data, their data management layer, if you will. Once your data is inside of the IBM SoftLayer data center walls, and you, for example, want to connect to the storage as a service offering, from within the data center, the IBM data centers, you can leverage SnapMirror as a service. So while the customer end user would not have direct access to the storage array, they can have their data moving from data center 1 to data center 2 utilizing SnapMirror as that data transport layer. So there's a couple ways to move data in and around SoftLayer, but if the customer does require the ability to SnapMirror directly into their own virtual private array, the ONTAP Select software-defined offering is the appropriate product to use.
Great. Another question that comes in from the audience has to do with, I guess, platform as a service. The question is, I run Oracle SAP over NFS on my NetApp filer today. We take snapshots every 30 minutes to protect our data. Can I run my normal Snap Manager toolset inside of IBM SoftLayer?
Yes, you can, Louise. So today, as mentioned, the SoftLayer IBM team has actually created APIs that will call the normal NetApp snapshot functionality from the storage as a service offering. So in conjunction with Snap Creator, which is a utility that's available from NetApp, you can download it. There's a SoftLayer specific plugin that's been created that customers can actually install in their own environment or their own virtualized data center, if you will, and then configure SQL or Oracle if you want, and have it actually call the the SoftLayer Snap Manager plugin, which in turn will call the SoftLayer API on their storage array and take a consistent backup of their databases. And you can programmatically control that to take that every 10, 15, 20 minutes, etc. And then you can snap mirror that data to a secondary location for an active DR copy inside of the SoftLayer data center.
Excellent. And the final question that I see up on the screen is an interesting one. I think it's one that a lot of people share. And the question is, how secure really is the cloud? I hear many persons have a fear for the risk of other people having control of his information. And this one I think I'll just throw out to all the presenters because, security is a big issue. We hear about it every day. And I know certainly IBM SoftLayer has done quite a bit of work, as has NetApp, to really ensure customers' data privacy as well as that of their clients. So if you could get into that in more detail, that would be great.
Sure, I'll kick that one off. So this is a very interesting question, and of course, this is the question that's, since the first remote data center has been built, that's always been the question of the hour, like how secure is it? Is my data secure? And my general blanket answer is, from a customer data perspective, it is as secure as the customer makes it. And the reason why I say that is because in the case of IBM cloud data centers and pretty much any other provider, most likely they have built a data center infrastructure that is unparalleled by anybody else's on-premise data center, primarily because we know already that we're dealing with other people's data. We also know that we have to manage a multi-tenant environment, and there are a number of compliances and certifications that we undergo to manage to different specs or management profiles that the average on-premise data center won't ever really need to adhere to. So in most cases, your provider's data center, just footprint alone, will be more secure or if you will, better built than the data center that you may have in your facility. Now, there are some exceptions, and of course, there are some people who spend, uber millions of dollars to build these extremely secure data centers on premises, but in my experience, that's not typically the case. So then the next question or the next step is, how do you secure like data at rest and data in transit? So that's where things like, encryption at rest and encryption, or even just VPN, simple things like that can help you secure your data while it's sitting at a data center or while it's in motion. And then the last thing that I typically like to point out is let's look at the simple things. So if you have servers, for instance, inside of a SoftLayer bare metal servers, once I provision those machines and hand over those operating systems, they're really not any different than that same operating system sitting in your own data center, downstairs or at your remote office somewhere. The only difference is they're now physically sitting in mine. So the same things you would do to secure that operating system as far as hardening, changing passwords, turning services off, things like that, those things still apply. And you should definitely continue to adhere to your normal security practices to make sure that those machines are secure as if they were in your own data center.
Great, thanks. A new question's just come online, and the question is, for storage as a service from SoftLayer on FAS, are there any plans to include SMB shares?
So, Jarod, I don't know if you know or familiar with the roadmap. I do know that there is a plan to enable CIFS at some point. I don't know where that falls or how that's progressed. But Jarod, I don't know if you have any insight into that.
Yeah, I didn't want to speak for you on that one, but it is a roadmap item. It's certainly one that we do get a lot of requests on. I don't know a specific target for an ETA on it, but it is something that we are diligently working on. So for the traditional NetApp customers that are used to having CIFS, SMB, et cetera, yes, it's definitely something that's coming, but it's not ready right now.
Great.
So if you do need like an SMB NetApp kind of functionality, I would definitely recommend using the ONTAP Select for that right now.
Great. I think we have time for one last question, and this kind of goes back to the original premise of the webinar, why the cloud is critical to your competitive advantage. And the question has to do with DevOps, and that's certainly an area where a lot of people are hoping that cloud implementations will hasten and speed up the DevOps process and make it more make people more productive to get from development to testing, putting it into the production environment. And so would anyone like to just answer that? I think you've mentioned it quite a bit in the presentation, but in terms of what the cloud impact is on those kinds of processes and what might be the best route would be, I guess, a way to answer the question.
Harold, do you want to take that one, or me?
Sure. Yeah, I could take a stab at that one as well. So, DevOps, I think DevOps has actually changed because of the cloud, because of the ability to do things like containers and be able to build up and tear down infrastructures in minutes. Whereas before, the iteration was months. Now iterations could be days or weeks, and it's because of the speed that we can now provision machines or provision virtual images or virtual instances or containers. We take a look at the IBM Cloud Bluemix platform, where you can literally spin up an application environment within 4 to 5 minutes, and not only do that, but then also use things like JazzHub, which is integrated into Bluemix to actually code and check out pieces of code, etc. And then, of course, subsequently store your source in your own Git. Like that type of integration and that type of ability to create, destroy, update, and delete your typical CRUD is now can be done within minutes. So I think DevOps has evolved primarily because of cloud versus how cloud cloud is, or how DevOps has changed cloud.
Right.
Well, thank you, Harold.
I think the two are inextricably linked. I think it was Harold who mentioned earlier the whole perception around cloud initially was as a tool for cost reduction, and I think that has evolved, and people are really looking at it as a tool for really spurring agility and speed, and that's really the common denominator that both DevOps and cloud have. So I think as we look forward, we're going to see those two inextricably linked as companies use cloud-based technologies to really achieve that kind of agility and speed that they need in the DevOps process.
Well, folks, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you very much to all the presenters, and I hope people on the line have found this very informative, and certainly we have resources for you to get more information, including the white papers that I talked about at the beginning of the session. So with that, thank you all very much, and look forward to having another webinar soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.